Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here.
And Little Miss Alaska Prepper.
And Little Miss Alaska Prepper is here also. She's going to be my helper today. So I thought that we'd go for a nice little drive on this beautiful day. And I'd take a few minutes to answer some questions from our past few videos. So since I'm driving, Little Miss Alaska Prepper is going to read off the name of the person who asked the question and the question itself, all right? So excuse all the traffic, ladies and gentlemen. This is a Alaska traffic jam right here. Look at this. Look at all this traffic. Goodness gracious. All right, so who's the first one?
Sheila Sullivan.
So from Sheila Sullivan, right?
She asked, if I am keeping sugar in mason jars, if I seal it with my vacuum seal, do I put an oxygen absorber in there?
All right, so Sheila's asking, I'm just going to repeat the question in case some of you guys didn't hear it. So Sheila's asking that if she's dry canning sugar in a mason jar and then vacuum sealing it with the food saver mason jar lid attachment, does she need to put an oxygen absorber in there? And the answer is no, Sheila. You do not need to put an oxygen absorber whenever you are storing sugar, okay? Especially if you're sealing it in something. In my opinion, some people may differ. You don't need to put anything in there at all, because once you evacuate most of the air in that container, all right, the only moisture that's going to be left in that container is whatever moisture there is in the small amount of air that's left in there. So some people may want to put in a I think it's called a condensant, or I forgot the name of the little packs that suck up moisture in there. But you definitely don't want to put an oxygen absorber in there. Well, what will happen is if you put an oxygen absorber in there, it's going to end up turning your sugar hard as a rock. It's going to be very difficult for you to get it out, especially out of a mason jar. If you live in a very humid area, and you're afraid that there may be a little bit too much moisture in whatever air is left in there, then you can put one of those little packs that soaks up moisture out of the air in there as well, and that won't hurt. But you do not need an oxygen absorber, whether you're storing it in a mason jar or whether you are putting it inside of a Mylar bag and then sealing it. All right, so I hope that answered your question. All right, so what's the next one?
Angel Hart asked, Mr. Prepper, please forgive my ignorance, but I am from Australia and I have never heard of canning meats. Can you please tell me how long canned chicken and beef lasts in jars on a shelf?
All right, and that's from Angel Hearts?
She also added, your pantry is impressive.
So that's from Angel Heart?
Yes.
Okay, so Angel Heart is asking, how long will pressure canned chicken or beef last in a jar once you process it? So remember that this is my opinion and also the opinion of the USDA. If you all remember, a while back I read an article from the USDA saying that canned foods pretty much last indefinitely as long as the container is not damaged and as long as it was processed correctly. So Angel, if you look back a few videos back, I did some canning videos where I canned, I believe it was ground beef and beef chunks, all right? Now, what you have to make sure is that you make sure that if you're canning these meats, that you're doing it correctly and you're following the right steps. Now, if you do that and you store your canned meats, whatever it is, be it chicken or beef or sausage or bacon, if you store those in an area that is more than not free from sunlight, that keeps a temperature, a constant temperature of less than 70 degrees, all right? I think the optimal temperature to store canned goods is like between 50 degrees and 65 degrees. If you can keep a temperature that stays in that range, my opinion is that your canned goods will last more than a decade, if not longer. Now, the oldest meat that I remember eating that I jarred myself was like 6 years old, and was absolutely nothing wrong with it. If you look back to a video where I made some beef stew with some beef that I had canned, I think that beef was just shy of 6 years old, and it came out perfect. All right, so what I would recommend is that before you go out and buy yourself a pressure canner and the equipment that you need to do your own pressure canning, first identify whether or not you are going to be able to store the product that you process in an environment that's going to be conducive to long-term food storage. Right? So like I said, somewhere where you can keep an all year round temperature, I would say between 45 to 65 degrees or 50 to 65 degrees. All right? If you are able to store your product in an environment that will meet that temperature requirement, and also in an environment where you're not going to have a lot of sunlight on your product, you should be all right. It should last you a long time. In addition to that, you just have to make sure that you study up on how to properly pressure can your meats. Okay, so I hope that helped. And if you've never done this before, Angel, I truly do recommend that you try it. Now, you don't have to buy brand new equipment. I'm not sure if in Australia there's a lot of if a lot of people do pressure canning. But I know that here where I live, and more than likely throughout the lower 48s in the US, Craigslist is usually a pretty good place to look for used pressure canners. All right, and if you can't find a used one, a new one is not really that expensive. You can get yourself a pretty good pressure canner for less than $100. All right, so I hope that answered that question. Look at this, ladies and gentlemen. Isn't this beautiful? This is such a nice sight. Look at how green. I think that you can see better on this video than on the video where I went on my walk, on how pretty the hillsides are with all the green. So, all right, little Miss Alaskan Prepper, what's the next question?
Security is a myth. It's not a question. Security is a myth said it is also possible to water bath canned butter as well.
Oh, well, who asked that question? Security as a myth?
Yeah.
Security as a myth. So I'm going to call you Security. So it's not a question, but a comment or a statement. Security says that it is also possible to do a water bath method for butter and not have to pressure can it. Is that pretty much it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I've seen that done before. I've seen it where people have done the water bath method for canning butter, and also I've seen it where people put the butter in the jars and they put it inside of the oven, let it melt, then they put on their lid, and then they turn the jar upside down and allow it to seal that way. Now let me tell you why I prefer not to do that. I am very afraid of catching any kind of illness that comes with improperly processed foods, to include butter. Now, I'm not saying that that's not an effective method of processing butter for long-term food storage, but I just rather be on the safe side. And to process butter via pressure canning, I've never done it, but I don't think it will work that great, because since when you pressure can, you're going to want to pressure can that butter for at least 75 minutes if it's in pints, or 90 minutes if it's in quarts. All of that temperature and that pressure and time, I think, would end up burning off the solids of the butter, and you would end up with, burnt pieces of solids of that butter in the bottom of your jars. Now, like I said, I've never done this before, but that's just what I think would happen. So that's why I am a big proponent of making ghee and pressure canning ghee. And I know that a lot of people also don't pressure can their ghee, that they just make the ghee, put it in the jar, and preserve it that way without water bathing it or pressure canning it. I would just rather be on the safe side and go with the ghee and pressure can it, and then store my actual real butter for long term via buying the Red Feather brand butter in a can, because that butter is delicious, by the way. If you guys haven't had the Red Feather brand butter in a can, give it a try. It's delicious. It's a little pricey, but personally it's like the best butter I've ever tasted. So it's a great butter to put away, and I have read a lot of reviews where people have opened them after like 17 years and the butter was still just as good, all right, as when they bought it. So that's my favorite butter to store for long term. I like to store ghee in order to have an option that I can use to fry foods with and bake with, but for butter, I like butter in a can. Now, I also like the powdered butter, all right? Now, when I compare the powdered butter that you guys saw me do that video not too long ago to real butter or butter in a can, there's really no comparison, all right? Because real butter, or the butter in a can, which is real butter anyways, it tastes much better to the powdered butter. But the powdered butter, I'm guessing that is a lot easier to work with if you're using it for baking and things like that, all right? Or for cooking, than if you are for trying to spread it on bread or make a grilled cheese sandwich with it, like I did, where it ended up not really melting on the griddle, right? But yes, that is an option that you have, is to do a water bath method for your butter. I just prefer not to do that with the butter. I just don't trust it, and maybe if someone that I knew had done it and given me a sample and I was like, wow, really, this is 3 years old, you know, it's perfect, and I didn't get sick or anything from it, I would probably try it. But I would rather just continue to do what I know works for me. So not saying that that's not a good method or that it wouldn't work. I just know that I'm comfortable with just storing butter in a can, storing powdered butter, and storing ghee for my, you know, butter needs. You know, if there ever came a time where I couldn't get butter, you know, at the store. So, but that's a good comment. It's not really a question, but I wanted to make sure that I included that comment, because there are different ways of doing things, ladies and gentlemen. It's not just the way that you see on this channel, all right? What I do and what I show you guys are things that I like to try that maybe I've never tried before, and also things that I've been doing it that way for a long time, and I know that it works for me. So what I recommend to you all is that you watch several videos on things that you're interested in, and try to pick up the good things from each video that you watch, all right? So if there's something that I do in one of my videos, and it doesn't have to do necessarily with just butter, it could be with anything. If there's something that I do in one of my videos that you guys like, but there's something that you don't like on that same video, then just take away the part that I like, obviously, and you know, and make it work for you, so that you can have the results that you want, all right? So that was a good comment. I appreciate that. Next one.
Scott DeSantis said, AP, there's so much going on in this world, so I prep for what I can control, not what I can't.
And that's another comment that I wanted to make sure that I put out there, because what Scott is saying there is 100% correct, ladies and gentlemen. You know, I obviously don't read off all the comments and questions that I see. First of all, because I don't really have the time to be able to do that. If not, I'd have a 5-hour-long video, right? And sometimes, honestly, a lot of the comments that people write, you know, that community members write or post on one of my videos, some of them are on older videos and I just don't see them, right? But that comment that Scott made is spot on, all right? I see a lot of people, and I've read a couple comments where people are like, well, you know, I'm poor, so if the SHTF happens, we're screwed anyway, so what can I do? Well, we can always do something, all right? And prepping is 100% about doing something to allow you to have some kind of control, all right? when everyone else around you loses that control. And what do I mean by that? So let me give you an easy example, and the easiest example that I can come up with. Why do you store foods? Well, the reason you store foods is so that if you lose control of acquiring food through the normal methods that you normally acquire food, i.e. going to the supermarket, all right, and getting your food, that you still have some food, all right? So even though you've lost control of acquiring food in the normal way that you and most everyone else does it, you still have some control over that because you prepped and you have a stockpile put away exactly for those times where you cannot control what's going on. So I wanted to make sure that I brought that up, and that I read that comment because I think it's a great comment. A lot of people feel that, well, if a situation occurs and I can't control it, what good is it going to be for me to have all of this stuff put away? Well, that's exactly why, ladies and gentlemen. That is why we prep. And that's another reason why I wanted to bring up this comment, is because I've seen a lot of people comment like that have given up before even starting. If that's the case, then you're probably going to have it a lot worse off if something did happen where you didn't have control. All right, so I'd rather have a little bit of control over my family having food and having the things that are necessary in order to live a halfway decent standard of living should everything around us start to fall apart, whether fast or slow, than to not have any control at all. So that's great. Next question. Oh, let's slow down.
Okay. Susie Q said, I searched to see if you had a video where you canned bacon, but I didn't see one. Your bacon looked pretty good in the jar, and I'm wanting to know what you did, so I would like to request a video from you on this.
Okay, thank you, Susie. So I probably won't be doing a video on canning bacon for a while for one reason. Because I have a bunch of bacon canned right now. I have a lot of it, all right? And let me tell you why I have a lot of it. Years ago, as you can see, that bacon that I used on that video where I made the bacon jam was about 5 years, 6 years old, something like that. So years ago, my wife used to work for a supermarket chain as a contractor. And every time that something was just about to go out of date, instead of throwing it away, their bosses used to let them bring it home. So my wife came home one day with about 50 pounds of bacon. And I spent all weekend long canning bacon, right? So I probably won't be doing one for a while. But let me tell you how easy it is to do, because there's nothing special about it, okay? So when you can bacon, you can do it two different ways, just like any other meat you can. You can either cold pack it or you can hot pack it. And let me tell you why I've done both. There's two ways of cold packing it. One way is the way that you saw on that video where I had the pint of bacon that I had pressure canned. And all I did with that was I just took the bacon out of the wrapper, I rolled it up, and I stuffed it in the jar, and then I, did everything that I needed to do to process the jar. Okay, that's simple. Another way that I've canned bacon before, as far as cold packing it, is I took a piece of parchment paper and I put the individual slices on the parchment paper, and then I rolled up the parchment paper. If any of you guys have ever had the Yoder's brand bacon in a can, it's something similar to that, all right? However, after processing the bacon with the parchment paper on, I realized that the consistency of the bacon was pretty much the same as the consistency of the bacon when I pressure canned it without the wax paper or without the parchment paper. So I decided from there on to just pressure can my bacon cold packed without any parchment paper. Okay, and it's as easy as that, Susie. All you have to do is just take your bacon, put it in your jars, get your jars cleaned up, put your lid on, and then pressure can it. at the correct pressure for your altitude and for the appropriate amount of time, depending on the size of the jar that you're using. I like to go 90 minutes with my bacon, no matter what size jar I'm using. I just like to add that extra few minutes to be safe, to be on the safe side. Okay, now to hot pack your bacon, I've made bacon bits before, and I've hot packed that and processed it. But it's not the kind of hot packing that you guys may be used to. Oh, just a second, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to pull in here real quick. Because I think we're going to turn around. Alrighty. So like I said, it's the kind of hot packing that you may not be, used to. So when I make my bacon bits, what I do is I take my bacon and I render all the fat out of it. And then once I render all the fat out of it, oh, look at these guys. Once I render all the fat out of the bacon, I keep frying it and cutting it up into little pieces, like with a spatula or something, until it turns into little bits. Right? Once it turns into little bits, and I've gotten as much oil or lard as I can out of there, I take it and I put it in my jars. All right? And then once I put it in my jars, I don't put anything else in there. I don't put any more water or nothing. I put it in there dry as I can get it. All right, with just a little bit of oil left in there, or grease, bacon grease. That's still on the bacon bits. And then I process it like that. I take it and I process it just like I would process anything else. And those bacon bits are great. We use those for when we make pizza sometimes, not all the times, but we use them to make pizza. We use them to make hash, right? And you can use them pretty much for anything else that you want to use bacon bits for. You can use it for anything, and they come out great. So that's how I, process my bacon and bacon bits for long-term storage, and it's worked out great. I've had that bacon for many years, and every time we take a jar out and use it, it's still just as good as it was when we pressure canned it. Right? So I hope you give it a try. Here in the future, if I find bacon on sale, like a really good sale, I may do a canning video on that. But don't be intimidated and not do it just because you haven't seen someone do it. It's just as easy as, processing your chicken or your beefs or your pork. Okay? What's the next one?
Valerie Johnson. AP, question for you. Can a larger batch of bacon jam be made and canned? I can see a lot of uses for this. All
right, thanks for the question, Valerie. I don't see why not. I've never done it. However, I do know that bacon jam is sold at the store, and it is in a shelf-stable jar. All right, so you can actually buy bacon jam in a jar at the store that's on the shelf. All right, that's not in a cooler or freezer or anything like that. So I don't see why you wouldn't be able to do that. Of course, it's going to have to be pressure canned, okay? Because it's a very low acid food, and of course it's a protein, so you're going to have to pressure can it. But I really don't see why you couldn't do it. It should be a pretty easy process. All right, it's going to take a lot of bacon because you guys saw that I used a pound of bacon to make that bacon jam, and it made about a cup and a half, maybe a cup of bacon jam. So yeah, like I said, I don't see why it wouldn't work out okay. The reason why I don't put up bacon jam in jars is because I've already got everything that I need to make it. All right, so for example, let's say that I just wanted to make my bacon jam out of my preps. All right, so I've already got the bacon that's in a jar that's canned, right? I've got dehydrated onions that I can rehydrate and use. All right, and then I've got the simple spices that I put in there. I think it was just a little bit of pepper that we put in there, and then I've got the sugar, and I've got the maple syrup if I wanted to add maple syrup to it instead. All right, so I've already got everything there, and all of the items that I need to make the bacon jam are in my long-term food storage preps. So I've got everything that I need there already. So I figure, why go through the trouble of doing it and jarring it all over again when I've already got everything I need to make. And you guys saw how quickly I was able to make that small batch of bacon jam. So that's why I prefer not to do it as far as making bacon jam for long-term storage. All right, next one.
Christian Prepper Gal. She says, I love their powdered butter. I use it for my meals in a bag or homemade MREs, and it works great.
Okay, so Christian gal, she's talking about the Oxen Farms powdered butter video that I did. And like I said before, I think that powdered butter is going to be better suited or best suited for using it in cooking and baking, and not using it as an actual butter spread. All right, I could eat it as a butter spread, you know, like putting it on toast and eating it. It wasn't unpleasant, all right, but I think it would be better suited for baking and cooking. All right, so I just wanted to read that comment to you because the next comment is a segue off of this comment. Okay, so go ahead. What's the next one?
Old Frugal One Hyperdrive Movement. Nice name. He or she says, I think I'll stick to red feather butter.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, and that's exactly why I wanted to go ahead and go over those two comments together. You see, this is one of the great things that you can get out of watching review videos, all right? And not necessarily 100% from my channel, of course not. But we have one community member that thinks that powdered butter is a good thing to have, all right? But because of this review, all right, the review that I did on the powdered butter, we have another one, Old Frugal, is it?
Yeah.
We have another one, Old Frugal, who says, hey, from me watching your video using this powdered butter, I decided to, instead of buying the powdered butter, I'm just going to buy more red feather brand butter in a can instead. So you see, so this person here is taking something that he didn't like about the video and saying, well, I don't think I'm going to like that product, so instead of using that, I'm just going to stick with doing this. All right, and that's part of the purpose behind these videos also, is I might get on there, and like I said, I'm very easy to please when it comes to food. All right, there's not many things that I don't like or would not eat, you know. So I may get on there and say, wow, this butter is not bad, you know, it looks pretty good. I mean, or it tastes pretty good. But honestly, I give the butter on its own, if it was just like regular butter, I think I gave it like a 6 or a 6.5 out of 10, all right, when compared to actual real butter. So just by me reviewing that and you guys seeing how it works, you've decided, or at least Old Frugal has decided, hey, you know what, I think I would rather just spend my money on buying the red feather brand butter in a can instead of buying this. Although, having said that, I am going to do some more videos with this butter. I'm going to do a video where I'm doing some baking and, you know, substituting this powdered butter for real butter in baking videos. So those videos are to come. So we're not done with that butter yet. I want to see everything that powdered butter can do and see how it comes out and see how it tastes before I decide whether I want to get, you know, more, or whether I would rather just invest the money on the red feather brand butter in a can. All right, so the next one.
A name says, great review. I have that product on my shelves, but I've never actually tried it.
Okay, and another one that's not a question but a comment. And I specifically took that comment out and wanted to go over it because, ladies and gentlemen, I highly recommend, and I think that you would agree with me, or most of you would agree with me, I highly recommend that if you're going to purchase something for your long-term storage, all right, of foods, I highly recommend that you try what you buy. None of this food that you get is going to kill you, right? You know that if you get let's say, for example, let's say you get an Oxen Farms beef stroganoff, right? Let's say you get that, you never try it, you put it away for 10 years, and something happens where you have to depend on that to get your nutrition. it would be a lot better if you knew that you were going to like that product when you ate it, or that your family is going to like that product when you eat it. You don't want to take a stressful situation and then be begging your children to eat the food that you're trying to give them, all right, so that they don't starve. Because some children will not eat food if they don't like it, all right? And you're going to be faced with whether you want to shove the food down their throat to make sure that they get the nutrition they need to survive, all right? Or just letting them get away with not eating it at all. So do your due diligence when it comes to your long-term food storage, all right? I understand that some of these things are pretty pricey and you may not want to open one up to try it, but you should really try every single thing that you buy. You should really try it at least one time, all right? And try using it before you commit to spending a lot of money on stocking up on these things, all right? As for example, I remember reading a comment. I don't think it's on here. I don't think that I saved it, but I remember reading a comment from someone that said that they have a case of the butter powder and they have a case of the carrots that is almost ready to expire and they don't know what to do with it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, for that specific community member, had you at least tried it when you first got it, you may have been able to say, well, you know what, let me start using this up like a year ago, all right, or 2 years ago, before it started, getting close to its expiration date. You would have told yourself, well, let me start using this up so that it doesn't expire and I don't have to get rid of it. Right now, you're faced with the possibility of having to throw that product away because it may not be good. Me personally, I would start using it and start finding ways to use it so that I wouldn't have to throw it away, okay? And I would even keep it after it expired and use it, because even after it expires, it's probably still good for a while longer. So that's my point on, you need to try your stuff when you get it instead of just getting it by the case and putting it away, all right? Because if you try it and you like it, once that expiration date is coming up, you know that you'll have no problem in using it and then replacing it with or rotating it with some new stock. All right, so I just think it's very important for you to try the things that you're storing away. You don't want to have a situation where you're already stressed out because something is happening that is out of your control, and then you having to deal with eating stuff that you don't like or that your family doesn't like, okay? All right, next one.
Okay, Cheryl Cooper. It says, I cried because I had no shoes.
Okay, I remember that.
Until I saw the guy with no feet.
All right, so obviously this is almost the end of the video, ladies and gentlemen, but I wanted to save that quote for last. And Cheryl left a quote on there, and it goes like this. She said, her quote, I think she's quoting somewhere else where she may have read it before. But Cheryl says, quote, I cried because I had no shoes, someone that had no feet. So I think where she's trying to get at there is that part of the video that I made last week when I did the food pantry drop-off is that no matter how bad you have it, someone else usually has it worse off than you do. So instead of feeling sorry for yourself in any given situation, take that time to reflect on the things that you do have and be grateful for the things that you do have. And also be thankful that you have the ability to make your situation better. All right? And having said that, ladies and gentlemen, I'll go ahead and end it with this. Because once we're done here, we're just going to head home. And I'll probably have a little chat with my daughter. Oh, she loves it when I sing to her. So I'll probably do a little singing to her on our way home.
No.
So I'll end it with this, ladies and gentlemen. So segueing off of what Cheryl said there, I've said this before, but I'll say it again. And as far as being grateful for what we have, just remember that giving is a beautiful thing, all right? And I know it's a beautiful thing. It's a great thing, especially when you give without expecting anything in return. That's the most beautiful form of giving there is. All right. And I always like to say that we have to remember that when we came into this world, we came into this world with empty hands. And when we leave this world, we will be leaving this world, whether you want to or not. We will be leaving this world with empty hands. So while we are in this world, and we are in this world in the physical form, we might as well live with a full heart. And giving is part of living with a full heart. All right, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so having said that, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this ride. I know this is kind of a short video for a Sunday, but I thank you all for being here today. All right, I hope you've been having a good weekend, and I hope that you have a good week ahead. All right, thank you to everyone for all of your support. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to support the channel, just take a look at the description, below the description. All right. The easiest way to support the channel is just to do your Amazon shopping using my link. It doesn't cost you anything more. And also, if you have the time, whenever you're watching one of my videos, just let one or two of the ads run through, and that really helps to support the video as well. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, that any contributions that are made to my coffee account will be used for charitable purposes. All right. I'm not keeping that money. I'm using any contributions that go to my coffee account for charities. And I do believe that the next charity that I'll be doing will be to the Battered Women's Shelter. All right. So having said that, ladies and gentlemen, remember to be good to each other. When people do good things happen. Remember to reach one, teach one, and repeat. If we all did this, the world would be a better place, and you know that it will be a better place. Many blessings to all of you and your families. This is Alaska Prepper.
And Little Miss Alaska Prepper.
And Little Miss Alaska Prepper. And I'm out. It came in like a wreck.
Oh my God.
Oh, you don't like that one? Okay. The cold never.
No.